In the middle of a political speech, as cameras captured every carefully crafted word from Rachel Reeves, a simple gesture, silent but devastating, shook the entire media setup. There were no insults, no shouting, just an ordinary-looking British man whose stunned expression and disbelieving eyes said what millions were thinking, without uttering a single word. It was a slap of reality with no physical contact, and it happened live. Rachel tried to stay composed, speaking of rebuilding a stronger Britain, reciting promises about economic recovery, public investment, social hope, and plans to improve the lives of working people. But none of it mattered the moment that man, standing right behind her, clearly visible to all, made it obvious that no one believed her anymore. His face said it all. Frustration, disapproval, restrained mockery. It wasn't an attack. It was a symbol. Social media quickly turned the image into a phenomenon. Some said they needed a beer or 20 to forget that moment. Others compared the scene to a terrible video call. Looks like a fake background and she's standing in front of a green screen, one user wrote, and someone even said Reeves sounded like that school teacher everyone hated for being boring. The comments kept pouring in. That guy represents every worker who's sick and tired of all this nonsense. You can read his mind. He's about to shout, "What a load of crap!" He's not unimpressed. He's depressed, and that says it all without moving a muscle. Labor picked the worst backdrop possible. Looks like a parody. In a country that has felt ignored for years, that moment became a kind of collective portrait. It reflected a nation that, faced with recycled promises and hollow slogans, no longer responds with outrage, but with pure disdain. While Reeves spoke of putting more money in people's pockets, the eyes in the room weren't on her lips, but on the silent man who, without trying, became the main character. His presence eclipsed everything. His body language, a mix of resignation, annoyance, and quiet contempt, wasn't crafted by any party or rehearsed by any advisor. It was raw, and that's why it struck so deeply. The speech went on. She listed figures, spoke of reforming the planning system, of removing barriers to growth, of investing to raise living standards. But to the average viewer, it all sounded like yet another replay of the political script no one listens to anymore. The disconnect was undeniable. Rachel seemed unaware that every word she uttered was received with apathy, as if she were speaking a foreign language. The scene became a symbol, not because of what was said, but because of what utterly failed to land. In a country where inflation offers no relief, where public services are stretched to their breaking point, and where the average citizen has learned to survive by expecting nothing from the government, Reeves' speech felt like a bad comedy, one where the lead actress doesn't realize the audience has already walked out. The message was clear. British politics is so disconnected, it doesn't even notice when the people are screaming through silence. That man, with his steady posture and eloquent silence, became the accidental spokesman for a weary nation. And as the memes spread, the media began to echo the moment. It wasn't a technical glitch. It wasn't a distraction. It was a sign, a warning that well-written speeches and promises of a better tomorrow no longer suffice. When applause fades, when the average citizen goes silent but expressive, leadership isn't just ineffective, it's irrelevant. The most unsettling thing about that moment wasn't Rachel Reeves' speech itself. It wasn't her carefully selected statistics, the technical jargon meant to sound convincing, or even her repeated promises to build a fairer, stronger, more equal Britain. What was truly disturbing was the absolute indifference it provoked, an indifference embodied in the silent figure of an ordinary man who didn't need to say a single word to spark a national reaction. His expression, his distant gaze, his tired posture, they all spoke for him. In that instant, he seemed to encapsulate what millions of Britons feel every time they turn on the TV and hear a politician speak. Disconnection, exhaustion, disbelief. What Rachel offered on that stage wasn't solutions, it was recycled rhetoric, and what that man delivered in return, through silence alone, was a damning verdict. We don't believe you anymore. You don't represent us. Social media quickly amplified the moment, turning it viral, not out of mockery or humor, but because it was instantly recognizable. Every viewer saw a piece of themselves in that man. They saw their own skepticism, their own frustration at hearing speeches about renewing the nation, while everyday life continues to unravel. Collapsing trains, overcrowded hospitals, unaffordable rent, meager pensions, soaring prices, and a constant sense that everything is falling apart. Yet the government insists that things are getting better. The contrast was brutal, as Reeves spoke of reviving the economy, attracting investment, reforming planning systems. The image of the man behind her silently dismantled every word. His presence wasn't a production mishap or stage oversight. It was a symbolic act of resistance. Unintentional, yes, but devastating. It was as if the entire British public stood there, watching, with hollow eyes, as a political elite continued to speak alone from a pedestal no one holds up anymore. And that, precisely, is the most serious part. This wasn't just a bad presentation or a poor choice of backdrop. It was a symptom of a deeper emotional rupture between the political class and ordinary people. In politics, you can survive mismanagement, even scandal, but when you lose emotional connection with the public, when you become background noise no one listens to anymore, you're politically dead, even if you're still standing in Parliament. Rachel Reeves wasn't heckled, she wasn't booed, she wasn't confronted, she was ignored. And that is the most dangerous kind of defeat a politician can suffer, because while shouting still means someone is listening, total silence reveals the bond is broken. What happened that day wasn't just a viral anecdote, it was a portrait of the times. A divided Britain, frustrated, tired of empty promises. A country where the average citizen no longer seeks to be convinced, they just want the truth. Not polished words, not promises of sustainable growth, not political marketing. The truth, even if it hurts. And if you won't say it, the people will tell it to themselves, with a single look. And so, without uttering a word, that man made something clear. Something no speech by Rachel Reeves could refute. The people are tired. And if politics fails to understand this soon, the people will begin to speak, not with votes, but with absence. And when the people withdraw, democracy begins to tremble. While the spotlight was fixed on Rachel Reeves' embarrassment, a far more serious political storm was erupting from another front. Former Conservative MP Bob Seely broke his silence and launched a fierce attack on the Labour government, particularly targeting Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and he didn't hold back. His explosive statement laid bare the level of contempt he feels toward the current leadership of the United Kingdom. His primary target was the public image of Starmer wearing a military uniform. For Seely, a veteran with first-hand experience in the armed forces, this was not an inspiring or symbolic gesture, but a direct insult. He looks like he's acting, like he's in some cheap play trying to play the tough guy, Seely said. To him, nothing is more hypocritical than seeing someone like Starmer, who once built a legal career defending individuals linked to extremism, now posing as a defender of the nation. The criticism didn't stop there. Seely also tore into the lack of transparency in defense spending, singling out Secretary John Healey for failing to explain the costs of the new Orca submarines. That's already pathetic, but sadly it's standard for this government, he said with clear frustration, and he added something more damning. If Healey, one of the least useless ministers in the cabinet, has no idea what the budget looks like, what can we expect from the rest? Seely went further. He harshly criticized the treaty concerning the Chagos Islands, an agreement he claims will cost £9 billion to return the territory to Mauritius. For the former MP, the decision is not only unnecessary, but one of the most stupidly disastrous things this government has done, and that's saying a lot. In his view, that money could be used for urgent and real needs, supporting pensioners, winter fuel, schools, or even strengthening national defense. Instead, he says it's being thrown away to please an international narrative no one here actually cares about. This wasn't just a political vendetta, it was a sign of how bad things have become within the UK itself. Because when a former soldier, someone who has served his country and understands the meaning of duty, sees his own prime minister using a uniform as a photo prop, the outrage isn't theatrical, it's visceral. Seely also laid out a truth that many avoid. Defense is expensive, yes, but it will always be cheaper than war. On this point, he was unequivocal. If the UK is now spending fortunes on weapons for Ukraine, it's not out of pure solidarity, it's because deterrence failed. Putin thought we were weak, he said, blaming British leadership for projecting vulnerability. If we'd done it right, if he had felt a real threat, we probably wouldn't be watching hundreds of thousands die in Eastern Europe. He also launched a scathing critique of Starmer's professional background, reminding the public that much of his career was spent defending individuals linked to radical causes, even enemies of the state. You can't spend half your life defending people who wanted to harm this country and then expect to lead its national security, Seely said with contained fury. But not everything was condemnation. Seely also took the opportunity to defend something he believes has been lost in the current political narrative, the value of military service. He strongly openly supported initiatives aimed at encouraging school leavers to join the armed forces, even if those ideas had once been dismissed by labor when proposed by conservatives. "If I could go back in time, I'd have joined the army much earlier," he admitted. "It was an experience that taught me discipline, pride, and love for this country." Amidst all his criticism came an unexpected call to reconnect with patriotism. According to Seeley, the Army, as well as the RAF and the Royal Navy, can offer young people not just a career, but an identity, a purpose. Right now, what Britain lacks most is this: pride in ourselves and in the nation. And that's the kind of structure military service can restore. In the end, Bob Seeley didn't just criticize the government. He delivered a public lesson in what it truly means to serve one's country. And he did it with brutal clarity. No filters, no frills, none of the hollow speech that overflows in Westminster. Because for him, this is no longer about parties or ideologies. It's about reclaiming dignity, coherence, and a real sense of responsibility.